ready to sitting down and meditating with you all. Actually, it's all very, very quiet on the chat box. So just, I don't know who's here. So if any of you feel like just saying hi briefly, in a minute I'm going to start this next part of the seminar series, which is on Bhante Sangharakshita's seminars on the Diamond Sutra. So I'm very careful to say that I'm not teaching a seminar in the Diamond Sutra, on the Diamond Sutra, because I would not feel equipped to do so. It's a very profound and very significant Mahayana Sutra, so a text from some several hundred years ago. But Bhante is a significant text actually for Bhante Sangharakshita, which Subhadramati explored last week, and she also explored what exactly a Mahayana text is, what a Mahayana Sutra is. It's got very particular flavour, very imaginative, very, very devotional, and with these confounding logic chopping wisdom elements in. So if you haven't watched Subhadramati's talk, I do advise you to catch up on that as well. But we're following Bhante's seminar on the Diamond Sutras, which features in this book, Wisdom Beyond Words, where he goes through a few of these perfection of wisdom texts, and the book is edited notes from seminars that he gave a few decades ago. They're quite a long time ago. So he didn't write the books, but the seminars were recorded, and these are the edited notes from that. So I've been actually looking at some of the original scripts as well from those seminars, which is very interesting. And one more thing to mention actually. So you get this book, Wisdom Beyond Words. And we've also got this figure. So we've got Prajna Paramita. She is an embodiment of these texts. Actually, she's sort of like, it's like these texts arose and this figure arose at the same time in this particular period of Buddhism. And this figure is Prajna Paramita. She has the same name as these texts, so perfection of wisdom. These are the Prajna Paramita texts. And if you know the Sevenfold Puja, the Heart Sutra, which we recite, she features in that as well. So we've got, it's really, really nice to have this image, which actually I borrowed from Lama's pyjamas today. I saw it in the window and thought that's very fortuitous, so we need to borrow that. So there she is. And you can't see clearly, we couldn't fit all of us on the screen actually at the same time, but she's got in each hand, she's actually got 4 arms. Her front arms are in meditation posture, and her 2 other arms are holding texts, perfection of wisdom texts in her hands. Yeah, so we'll end the evening with a ritual that relates to Prajna Paramita as well. Actually, I was reading somewhere else that Bhante talks about the Mahayana, which these sutras are from. He says that one of the things that the Mahayana did was to bring together devotion and wisdom, which I think is really, I haven't finished thinking about what that means, but bringing together devotion and wisdom, and I think something about the gift of these rituals that we perform from those times been handed down. Really emphasises that. Okay, so let's get this show on the road. So I'm just going to start with this. It is a terrible, fearful thing to fall into the hands of the Diamond Sutra, because once you are caught, well, you are caught. Wriggle as much as you like, you will not get free. So that's Bhante on the Diamond Sutra. Wiggle as much as you like, you will not get free. And later he says, it pulverizes all the conditionings that stop us from seeing the truth face to face. So it's dramatic, isn't it? This is a dramatic situation. The Diamond Sutra is meant to be like a thunderclap. It's meant to make us face up to reality in ways that we can't really usually do. Yes, and as I mentioned before, that Bhante's got a special relationship with the Diamond Sutra, that when he was 16 he read it. So back in the 1930s, I think, he read it a very long time ago, and he had a really strong response to it. And I have read the text, and it's not easy to understand, even though I've got, done a reasonable amount of Buddhist study, and I've read Bhante's seminars. It's not an easy text to understand. There's nothing like English literature, and it's nothing like what I know of religious texts in a way. But Bhante, I feel like that what he's describing this, once you are caught, you're caught. It feels like he was caught, and that catching of the Diamond Sutra may well have happened in previous lifetimes of his. He read it and he felt that he'd always been a Buddhist. He knew he was a Buddhist, and he would always been a Buddhist. So Bhadramati also mentioned that if you read the Diamond Sutra and understand it the first time that you read it, it means that you've made the Bodhisattva vow in previous lifetimes. So we can just ponder that. It's really nice to bring to mind Bhante's special connection with the sutra. And this sutra is a dialogue. It's a dialogue between enlightenment and someone inspiring to be enlightened. So it's a dialogue between a practitioner called Subhuti and the Buddha, and it takes a place in a place that the historical Buddha would have actually visited, but it's a more imaginative, archetypal version of that place. I refer you back to Bhadramati's talk for more background on the sutra, but just to say that it's a dialogue between someone who's unenlightened and someone who's enlightened. And I can't help but think that some of the sort of craziness of it is an inevitable result of speaking on one set of terms that us unenlightened people can only use the concepts that our minds can grasp, and enlightenment is not in that framework. So no wonder the mind starts to boggle in that kind of dialogue. Okay, so we're just looking this chapter that we're looking at this evening is part of a section called the Bodhisattva's Career, and it's just one paragraph of the sutra, and I'm just going to ask Dayabhadra to read it out.
The Lord said, "Hear Subhuti, someone who has set out in the vehicle of a bodhisattva should produce a thought in this manner. As many beings as there are in the universe of beings, comprehended under the term beings, egg-born, born from a womb, moisture-born, or miraculously born, with or without form, with perception, without perception, and with neither perception nor non-perception, as far as any conceivable form of beings is conceived. All these I must lead to nirvana, into that realm of nirvana which leaves nothing behind. And yet, although innumerable beings have thus been led to nirvana, no being at all has been led to nirvana. And why? If in a bodhisattva the notion of a being should take place, he could not be called a bodhi being, and why. He is not to be called a Bodhi being in whom the notion of a self or of a being should take place, or the notion of a living soul or of a person.
Great. Thank you. Great. Okay, so I wonder what you made of that. And actually this bit, at least with the right guide, we can decipher some meaning from this section. So let's see what we can make of it. And just to say, we apparently the chat's not showing our end, so I'm sorry we haven't been able to say hi specifically to people, and thank you for saying hello to us. We hope to get that fixed so that we can hear your questions later, actually. Yeah. Anyway, so we'll be spending some time looking at there's a paradox that this section presents, and there will always be a paradox when we're looking at moving from the conditioned to the unconditioned. Like as I was implying earlier, they're not really compatible, so we're always going to be exploring a paradox. And the paradox that we're going to come to in a little while is the Bodhisattva, the paradox of the Bodhisattva trying to save all beings from the sufferings of samsara, and at the same time, and equally importantly, trying to realise the emptiness of all beings. So that there are beings, and that one is trying to save all beings, and that at the same time there are no beings to save and no one to save them. So what does that mean? We'll get to that in a little bit. Some other things to say first. So in this section, Subhuti is being spoken to by the Buddha, and the Buddha said, so the Lord is the Buddha. He talks about all sorts of different kinds of beings, as many beings as there are in the universe of beings comprehended under the term beings, and he elucidates a few different kinds of beings. Egg-born beings, born from a womb, moisture-born, miraculously born, which apparently means sort of spontaneously born, fully formed, but with perhaps a subtle body. So demons, gods, the like, those kinds of beings. So they're included in these kinds of beings. Beings with or without form, with perception, without perception, and with neither perception nor non-perception. So this is a very, very comprehensive list of different kinds of beings. And those last ones, Bhante says, they relate to super conscious states of meditation. So the highest dhyanas, where actually human beings can also partake in this mode of perception, which is neither perception nor non-perception. Anyway, so we've got an array of different kinds of beings. So it's a bit like the widest scope of beings that could be possibly described. And the Bodhisattva should produce or arise in him or her this thought that as many beings as there are, I must lead them to nirvana. As far as any form of beings is conceived, or all these I must lead to nirvana, into that realm of nirvana, which leaves nothing behind. So that realm of nirvana, which leaves nothing behind, is, I think this is quite important actually, because we're going to be talking about emptiness, which is one translation of the word shunyata as well. So we just need to be careful that when we talk around emptiness and leaving nothing behind, we're not in any way talking about annihilation. What we're talking about is complete transformation, a kind of transformation that includes everything, a kind of transformation or even conversion of one's home, of every aspect of being, a conversion or transformation rather than annihilation. And this reminds us, for those of you who know the Heart Sutra, which we do recite very often in Triratna and at the London Buddhist Centre when we can do sevenfold puja, these words gate gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhi swaha, they'll be familiar to you, and they describe this experience of enlightenment that leaves nothing behind. It's gone, gone, gone beyond, gone altogether beyond, enlightenment, success. So that's what those words mean. So we have this mega vision of every single kind of being that one could possibly conceive of, or even, I certainly hadn't conceived of some of the kinds of beings that are described. Those kinds of beings, every single kind of being transformed at the profoundest level with absolutely nothing remaining, transformed into enlightened beings, into the state of nirvana. And I wrote a note here saying it makes me, it can either make you feel tired just thinking about it, or it might make you feel very, very inspired and galvanized to practice your spiritual life. And I think either one of those, I think if one does feel very, very inspired by this vision of complete transformation of every enlightenment being available to every single kind of being possible, until we're much more resourced spiritual practitioners, we will at some point get tired of trying to achieve that. I tend to give up things quite easily, so defeatist. I feel tired just thinking about it to start with. But anyway, let's see if I can get more of myself on board as we explore this further. So we've got this vision set out, and maybe I should just say something about Bodhisattva at this point. Bodhisattva it can mean quite a few different things, and we often talk about Bodhisattva figures that are depicted in similar ways as Prajnaparamita. She's a Buddha figure. These archetypal, beautiful figures, Green Tara, Avalokiteshvara. There's a whole pantheon of Bodhisattva figures, and they're from an archetypal realm. And they, when we're not talking about, currently we're not talking about that kind of bodhisattva, but we're really talking about human beings who want to tread the bodhisattva path, who want to become a human being who's got a vision, not only that they can gain enlightenment for themselves, not only can they just sort of sit in the forest, practice meditation, and gain sort of individual enlightenment, but that enlightenment is the birthright of all beings. So a human being who's got a vision to practice for themselves and for other people. This is what the Bodhisattva ideal is. It's a path that doesn't separate oneself from other beings. So we're talking about, there's 4 types of bodhisattva. There's a novice bodhisattva. This is someone who wants to practice, who wants to tread the path, wants to practice ethically, will perform puja, meditate. Then there are bodhisattvas of the path, and they've had a bit more realization. They have got some more spiritual depth, let's say, and there are irreversible bodhisattvas who are even further along the path, who've made big spiritual breakthroughs that mean that they won't revert back to their old ways, as implied by the name irreversible Bodhisattva. And then the Bodhisattvas that I mentioned a minute ago, the archetypal figures, the Bodhisattvas of the Dharmakaya. But we're talking about people, maybe practitioners, a bit like you and I, who want to dedicate our lives to Buddhism and need a vision to galvanize our spiritual lives, to galvanize our practice. Yeah. So Subhuti can be seen a little bit like this. And there's probably more I could say about Subhuti, but we can see Subhuti, who's discoursing with the Buddha, is a little bit like this. And the Buddha tells Subhuti, a minute, let me find the place, that and yet, although innumerable beings have thus been led to nirvana, no being at all has been led to nirvana. So, a contradiction. We're here at this contradiction. This is where the rub really comes. No beings at all have been led to nirvana. And what does that actually mean? And Bhante says that beings do not exist, and that this is the fundamental insight of the Diamond Sutra, that beings do not exist. But what does that mean? Because it's fairly obvious that here we all are, even if we're only virtually here. Here we all are. I feel very real. Diabadra and Danny behind the computer, looking like they feel quite real too.
Definitely.
Yeah. So what's happening here? And actually, where do I want to go from here? We've come to this point. I don't know if any of you watched Poetry East on Saturday night. Maitreya Bandhu was interviewing a writer who called Charles Eisenstein, and I thought he put something very helpfully in terms of this non-existence. And he wasn't talking about whether he existed or not, but what he was saying was that he had this reflection of, did I, through my own efforts, decide to be born? And I can even though I feel very real and tangible and full of my own world just now, I can honestly admit that I had nothing to do with my deciding to be born on this planet. It wasn't to do with any of my own efforts. And he said, did I decide to be able to experience the heat of the sun? Was it through my own efforts? And you can take this reflection quite deeply. The things that we think of as ours, was it through my own efforts that I look like I do, that I've got the kind of body that I've got, and even the kind of aptitudes that I've got, that I like to take a bit of pride in the things that I'm good at, and even take a kind of feel ashamed about the things that I'm not good at. Does this actually have very much, did I create this? And I certainly didn't, and I didn't create the world in which I interact. And you can keep going on with this, the things that we identify, the things that we enjoy, the things that we identify ourselves with, have very little relation to us. So this reflection, I think, can take us quite deep, can take us into, what is actually going on? What, in this case, what can I say is mine, and what can I say is me? When really I don't have anything to do with it. And it's not to say that one doesn't have responsibility, It's not saying that at all. It's kind of a reflection in a different kind of area. That this idea of something that's discrete, that's separate, that's unaffected, that's self-created, that is unaffected by conditions around it, or even that idea that conditions are around us. That's a false one, and it doesn't bear much. Examination. I mean, I think I sort of imagine myself. I think I've said this before in Dharma talks, that maybe like if you imagine like all the world's a stage, and out we pop, and the world, we sort of act in the world for the duration of our lifetime, and it's me and it's me and it's me, and things happen and I change a bit. I sort of wear out and learn a few good life lessons, etc. But essentially, it's me, born from my birth to my death. Buddhism says that's not really what's going on. That conditions are much, much more interconnected, interrelated than that. Yeah, which is quite. Well, it's a hard thing to realise. I mean, it's hard enough actually, me just talking about it. Bhante says, it's easy enough to talk about. Well, I'm not, I don't find it particularly easy to talk about, but it's hard enough talking about it. We can get an intellectual understanding of it, but for us to really, really, really realise that means that this like core shaking needs to happen, that the Diamond Sutra talks about. Yeah. So, and there's a lovely image actually, which Bhante talks about in how beings do relate to one another. Which I actually find really beautiful. And he says it's from another sutra, the Gandavyuha Sutra. The reality, it's not even that beings are separate, but it's that everything is of this nature, of a conditioned nature. And he says that the reality of things in this sutra is compared to the intersecting beams of light. So I don't know if you know this, but when beams of light cross over one another, they interpenetrate. They don't bump into each other and sort of stay separate, and neither do they fuse into oneness. They cross over. They cross over one another. So you have all these rays of light flashing in all directions, crisscrossing, sort of weaving, and none of them actually obstruct one another. That's the beauty of it. None of them actually obstruct one another. As soon as you start congealing things and keeping them separate, then you've got obstructions, and then you've got things that you want to get close and things that you've got to push away. But if we have a deeper vision, like these beams of light, then it's much, much closer to how things are. So they all shine through one another. What a lovely, beautiful way of relating to the world, letting everything shine through everything else. They're not lost or merged into one great light. They all these beams of light maintain what you might call their separate individualities, but they offer no obstruction to penetration by other individualities. They're all mutually interpenetrating, and so interfusing and crisscrossing these beautiful, different coloured beams of light, creating individuality and unity, neither obstructing the other at the same time. So, a lovely visual image for this idea that there is no self. And Bhante says that the diamond, throughout this being, the fact that this assertion that beings do not exist. This is the fundamental insight of the Diamond Sutra, and it plays out in different ways. It's described in different ways throughout the sutra. So the three ways are ontologically, psychologically, and logically. So ontologically, he says, no such thing as a separate entity exists. So we just explored that a little bit. So no such thing as a separate entity exists. And yet it's not nothing. So we're not saying that there is nothing, and we're not saying there is something. We're left with a kind of a need to be open to open to changing our assumptions about our deepest modes of being. And he also goes on to say in this vein that all words like Buddha, merit, Buddhist words, Dharma, are all provisional. So nothing is fixed and separate, all provisional. And they're just, even the Buddhist words are just there to help us on our way. So that's one way in which this beings do not exist is talked about in the Diamond Sutra. Psychologically, and Bhante says this means not settling down. Yeah, so this is quite a challenge. Not settling down into being one way or the other, not fixing ourselves. And I think that doesn't just mean like not settling down and moving to the country and but not settling into habits that just in order to have an identity. I think it means something like that. It's just not needing to do things because I'm like that. I sort of feel that urge to sort of create an identity. It's very, very strong. And not settling down. It reminded me when I read that of it's a beautiful sutta from the Pali Canon actually called the Danda Sutta, which I'll read a little bit. So it talks about the fear that struck the Buddha before he was enlightened, and he said, this is him talking retrospectively, seeing creatures flopping around like fish in water too shallow, so hostile to one another. Seeing this, I became afraid. The world completely lacks essence. It trembles in all directions. I longed to find myself a place unscathed, but I could not see it. Yeah, the world completely lacks essence. It trembles in all directions. I longed to find myself a place unscathed, but I could not see it. So it's not even that we shouldn't settle down. It's actually that we can't. We might try. We might try to find ourselves a little place to stay fixed. It might be an identity. It might be, Bhante talks about us being like little birds in a nest, up high, away from everything. It's terribly appealing. It's terribly, terribly appealing. We want to be safe, and we want to not be intruded upon. But it's not possible. It's not possible. Something will come along and uproot that, whether we like it or not. And Bhante says the reason why we find it hard to not settle down, it's not, or to not depend on something. That's how he also talks about it. We want to depend on something, and that depending on something might be someone else. It might be ourselves being a certain way. It might be things. It could be a whole range of things, that dependence. But he says it's not settling down. It's not actually what we want. It's why it's hard to realise. We want to depend on something. We want to. And it's very, very hard to unhook from that wanting to depend on something. But whether we try and unhook it ourselves or not, something will come. Life will disrupt our plans. Yeah. And this not settling down it comes with a little warning, because I think it can also seem like a sort of invitation to be irresponsible or sort of impulsive or something, and just kind of never commit to anything. It's very, very different from making a commitment, which is a very important thing. Yeah, and then Bhante talks about the logical aspect of beings not existing, and the doctrine of shunyata, of emptiness, shows the rationality of logic being transcended. So the fact that logic can't help us arrive at an answer in this set of paradoxes, these spiritual paradoxes. Logic can't help us. Not that we dispense with logic, not that we go, stop being so intellectual, stop using a brain, just kind of feel. It's not that we do that. It's not beneath logic. It's bursting through or rising above logic. That's how Bhante puts it, rising above logic. So all these three things, we'll encounter them in the sutra again and again. And the final aspect of this this part of the seminar is Bhante talks about the Bodhisattva vow, which is not really separable from the idea of a Bodhisattva. So that's what we're going to end with. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Bodhisattva vow and this need to help all beings realize nirvana. It can sound a little bit like, I think I'm slightly allergic to a kind of I have got to save the world, everybody's in trouble, this kind of crusade archetype. So the Bodhisattva ideal, when one doesn't think about it very hard, can feel a bit like that kind of crusade. And here we are, I'm going to save you, whether you like it or not, here I am, everybody be saved by me. It's not the kind of attitude that we're talking about. It's a deeper thing than that, as we'll see in a minute. I'm just going to refer to the sutra again. Perhaps I'll go back a step and not talk about the vow just yet. But if a bodhisattva is practicing along the path and is responding to beings, they will look. This is all quite complicated. They will look as though, Bhante says, we see them in a particular way, and as normal people, as people who aren't bodhisattvas, we think of compassion as being directed towards individuals. So we think of groups of individuals or particular individuals, and we see people particularly suffering, and then our compassion, or at least he says quite dryly, our pity arises. But this bodhisattva does not perceive individuals. So someone who is more realized than us will not perceive individuals. They see the truth of selflessness, the truth of non-individuality, the truth of shunyata or emptiness. And it is out of this perception, this realization, that the compassion of the bodhisattva arises, a compassion which we perceive or interpret as compassion for individuals, but it's more mysterious than that. It's not a compassion for individuals, it's just a spontaneous response. And it's though you see very, very clearly the need of beings, and you form a wholehearted wish to devote yourself to that need. That's what the Bodhisattva vow will be like. It's that you see that the only remedy to suffering is a spiritual one, and you see that the need of beings is purely a spiritual one, and you see this so clearly that you cannot do anything except devote yourself to the fulfillment of that need. So there's nothing left over. There's nothing. There's no energy that's left over that can be devoted to maintaining a selfhood or a sense of identity. And in little ways, perhaps we can relate to times where we've felt very, very absorbed. Maybe working in a team, you've got some deadline, and it's just the people that you're responding to. You're in a flow with the work, the task, and sometimes I've experienced this where the job becomes more important, and people's egos, my ego, whether I'm the one who's doing the best job or whether it's someone else's, that can go out of the way when the task is so absorbing and maybe urgent. Particularly in an emergency or something, that's definitely how we sort of tend to respond, is just like work out what's the best way to sort this out, rather than kind of thinking, I don't know if I'll look very good if I do that, so the usual preoccupations can go. So there's maybe like a little flavour of what that absorption can be like. Yeah, and so bodhisattvas are completely unself-conscious, and not only are they unself-conscious of themselves, but they help people freely and spontaneously without having any definite notion of helping people. It's not even like they're thinking, that person needs help. Those terms, the whole terms of construction in that way. So it's not like there's no me helping, there's no beings to help, and there's no actual help at all. It's just this spontaneous, compassionate action. And so Bhante and the Bodhisattva vow arises out of this. It's like once you see something needs doing, the vow is spontaneous. It just kind of comes from this seeing. Yeah. And we're going to end with something a bit more down to earth. So Bhante's saying, this is all very well, but if one of us is trying to be a bodhisattva, the question arises, how does one seeing... this is the fundamental question, to put this into practical use. How does one see beings at the present, and how should one try to see beings? Yeah, so the sutra sort of presents us with this different way of seeing. So it's like, what do we see, and how should we try to see? And this is very, very practical advice, and how that we're going to come to. And I think Bhante is sort of acknowledging this is all because it's so advanced, it can seem a little bit abstract to us. Like, well, okay, that's very well, there are no beings, but what am I going to do about it? And he says the fundamental problem is that we see people, we generally see people as how can they be of use to us? So we see other people in a utilitarian way. And the way that we need to see people is as individuals, as beings in themselves, and see what we need to do for them. So rather than seeing people for what they can do for us, how they can support our egos, how they can provide for us, certain kind of self-view, how they can help us in different ways, rather than thinking of this. And this is a radical change. So it's like the Diamond Sutra promises to shatter our core, and then Bhante says, well, what we need to do is stop seeing people in terms of what they can do for us, and start seeing them as people in their own right. Well, that's the more that we can do that, the more that will stir us to our core. So we need to start paying attention to what other people need. Start having a bit of empathy around their own lives. And this is, Sangharakshita is very good like this. He just breaks it down to very clear, simple things that we can do. Practice the metta bhavana. Take other people in their wholeness. And actually there's a nice warning in this. He talks about, I'll end up in a minute, but he talks about that living in a monastic life, living with monks and nuns away from family. It can be, you can keep yourself a bit more separate. Like raising a family, there's no chance really of keeping yourself separate, especially if you've got a big family. And the demands of raising children does have a maturing effect on a person most of the time. So he makes a little warning about people practicing the spiritual life. Need to have relationships, I suppose, with other people that are going to bring that out in us. And it made me think of spiritual friendship, which he didn't mention, but just being such a strong part of teaching. And I myself thought in my life I don't have a family. And I thought if I don't have a family, I'm going to need to put myself in conditions that are as strong as, that are going to bring, draw me out, help me grow, which is a little bit of an aside. But I think it's quite a good point to make in relation to sort of living alongside people, being connected to, not just seeing people as we need them to be. And of course we can't do any of this unless we are working on our own self-worth. So this is how he ends, really, is just saying we also need to have a positive self-view, to know that we can love and that we are loved or can be loved. And this is the only thing that we need to do in preparation to being a bodhisattva, is to work a little bit on our own self-worth, so that we're then able to take in other people, able to see other people's needs, and relate to them as beings that can be enlightened, not beings who are there for our own convenience or inconvenience. And this is where we should start, with metta bhavana, developing our own self-worth, seeing if we can relate, seeing what the needs of beings are, rather than thinking there are no beings, seeing what the needs of beings are without our own unconscious motives getting involved. And he says this is how we start. But don't forget, he says, that there are also, that we need to be seeing more deeply into what beingness and non-beingness are as well. Okay, so I've gone a little bit over time. We're going to have, we'll shortly have a break. Diabhadra is going to say a few things, then we'll have a break, and then we'll have some questions. So we hope that we'll be able to get the chat working in terms of having questions for the second half. If not, we'll think of something else.
Yeah, you can do it. Great, lovely. Well, thank you very much, Kusalasara. That was great. Yeah, really enjoyed that. Very clear. Just a couple of things. So, this whole, the Bodhisattva vow, the Bodhisattva ideal, in a way, that's the way Bhante Sangharakshita lived his life. He wanted to help others as much as possible. And those of us who are in the order, we're sort of trying to follow in his footsteps as best we can. We really want to, as Kusalasara was saying, work on ourselves, but also help others to the best we can. And often we can do this better if we do it collectively. And we've created centres over the years. There's people who joined us. People come, for as long as they want or short periods to help. So we're just trying to, as it were, create spaces where we can practice and we can all help each other grow and develop. And that's what the London Buddhist Centre is about, really. It's about people's growth and development. It's about helping ourselves and helping others. So that's something I'm very inspired by, and it's a wonderful thing to be involved in. So I'd encourage you to sort of take part if you can. We are slowly opening up, and so come and lend a hand. That's great. We've got people like Danny here behind the scenes, who's on tech, and when we're getting more and more open classes, we have people making the tea and holding holding it behind the reception desk, etc. But also we appreciate money as well. It does take money to run the centre, and it means we can reach more and more people. The more money we can sort of feed into the London Buddhist Centre, it does mean we can reach more and more people. One of the wonderful things in the last year has been going online, and it means that we've managed to connect with people not just from London but from around the UK and all over the world. And I know that's very much appreciated, and it's just great to be part of this sort of network of people. And I know going forward we're going to keep on being online as well as opening up the centre as well. So if you can, please do give. Danny will be able to put something online to tell you how you can give, anything is very much appreciated. Just letting you know, one online course coming up. It's called The Journey and the Guide, and that starts on the 29th of April for 8 weeks. And these are 8 Thursdays. And again, Danny's going to put that up in the chat box. And again, this is a tried and tested course developed initially by Maitra Bandhu, one of our teachers who's been teaching many, many years at the LBC. And it's a very practical, down-to-earth course. And it's, anybody tuning in today would be very, very welcome, and it'd be very suitable. If you've got friends or family who are interested in Buddhism, it's also suitable for complete newcomers as well. So do look into that if at all you're interested. And do subscribe onto the LBC YouTube channel. It's really, really does help us if you can subscribe on that. I've got the right words there. I'm just looking at Danny. Great.